Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So another day that we gather here for the day of the third eye, the emotional week of Taurus. And because today is painting and all the colors, so I came with all the colors from the DNA. Let's begin. As I was saying yesterday, the idea of talking about arts this week is because we have been building the house, which is our home with the fire inside. And this home, this fire, is related with our soul. So our soul is the inner fire that activates the potential that we have within in order to manifest it in the outside. And Taurus is the energy that manifests. Talking about the soul of Taurus, it is related to the arts, to the manifestation of the inside, the inner world. This is why the proposal for this week is to work in the understanding of the main arts, the main inspirations of the muses, so we can understand how they work in ourselves, how they appear in the world, and what importance they have in our inner world, in our inside, so we can understand what they mean for us. So, and here, before we start with all this week of the arts, I would like to say to you that don't think or don't say, I don't know to do that. And in the other hand, don't say, I already know how to do this, and I'm really good at it. Why not to say either of those? Because the people that say, I don't know how to do this, is not that you don't know how to do this. It's because you think that you need a technique or to know in order to manifest something. And basically, it's not like that. Basically, in order to manifest art, you just have to feel it. You just have to express what you have within. It's not about technique. It's not about being a great artist to do art. What you just have to do is to express and to play with it, to be original with it. Arts is not about technique. Techniques are thousands of them. And every artist follows different techniques. So it's not about that. It's about what you want to express. So that's the main thing that we have to understand in order to make art. And in the other hand, those who know how to do art and have the technique have to be always open to have to be always open to know that there is much things and many things more to understand, to learn from what we do. It's not only about the technique, it's also about what we have to understand from what we do, the transcendental idea of what this art means, and not only to do it properly. So why I say this about not thinking about the technique exactly when we are talking about art? Because technique comes from the Greek techne, that means beauty, means to have a shape or something that is perfect. Okay, it's something that is beautiful in somehow. So technique was used in order to have a structure in what you kind of are painting or doing. But the technique starts to be a way in which you design the things or the beauty of what you are doing. But actually, what I am trying to say here is that in order to take a technique and to practice a technique and to and to have a technique for yourself, you have to discover your own technique, which is to discover your own beauty. Which means that for some people, the technique is, or the beauty and the technique are to paint a very hyper-realistic side scene, for example. And for some others, this would be, I don't know, cubism or just whatever, lines or whatever. So what we have to do sometimes is to think that maybe it's not a beautiful sight scene that brings the soul from outside. Maybe is also sadness, is also chaos, and we have to discover first our own technique before we can understand others' techniques and to improve in those other techniques. So, for example, when we want to improve ourselves with others' techniques, like to learn how to do it in different ways, this means that we have to position ourselves in the body, in the motion of someone else, or of something else, which means that we have to be in that same connection or that same level in order to have that connection with the art. So this means that what we have to do first is to express what we have within, express the art that we have inside, and then after that, we can start to manage other kinds of technique by improving ourselves and learning from the emotions of others. So of course that there are people that were born with the gift of doing something. Some people that have to practice the whole life in order to do something. But to be born with the gift, it doesn't make you better. To be born with the gift, it means that you have practiced this in other lives, or that you inherit it from your family tree, in your DNA. You have the skills to do that, but it doesn't make you better. What really sometimes some people that takes a long time to practice and years to practice this, they can become better than the ones that have the gift. Okay, but it's all about practicing and to allow yourself to express the will of what you have inside. A lot of people paint, but some people are painters. And there are many painters, but just a few are artists. And what I mean with this, that we can paint, we can do things, of course, and also we can have really good techniques that makes us painters. So good painters. But within the painters, there are just a few that are artists, that are the ones that you can see them in everything that they do, that you just have to take a look at it to understand who they are. Like, for example, Dali. When you see a frame made by Dali, you don't need to see that there is Dali's sign there. You kind of see it and you say, oh, that's Dali. Why? Because the artist is painting the soul of itself. It's not painting for others. It's not painting for it to be beauty. It's not painting for anyone else. It's painting for itself. So you can see the artist in the painting. You can identify them just by looking at anything. And that's because the soul was imprinted in that. Okay? This is important to understand in order for us to see that the only way in which you can become an artist is by connecting with yourself, by being yourself and saying, I am, when you go within with the power of your soul. Of course, that we are mammals, so we need to imitate the techniques of others in order to improve, to move around in the environment, but we have to use that environment and those tools as something that helps us to find our originality. So we can say that nobody is bad at anything. We are basically mammals looking for our originality. So once said this, let's talk about painting. Painting is basically the art that is born from light, from the interpretation of light, which is that we receive the light towards our eyes, we perceive it in our brain. So we interpretate the light that comes from the outside to inside to understand our inner world and to understand the world. So we have two ways in which we will express this light. One, receiving it from the outside to understand the environment, and the other one will be to express the inner light that we have towards the outside, which is to manifest that light to the world. So we receive from the outside to mold the inside, and then through painting, we take the colors from the inside and we project it into the outside. So painting is the way in which we can send data of information in shape of data, of codes, to the world. So now by our eyes. So now let's try to understand why is that. So in order to understand this, we have to about the information, we have to remember something that we have spoken about last year, I guess, related to the wavelength of light. So first of all, I guess that we have mainly three ways of receiving light and to perceive light. The first one is the one that is created in the chemical reactions of the suns and the stars, like the sun for us. The other one would be the bioluminescence, which is created by some animals and some insects in nature. And the other one is the electricity, which is created by, as you see, the lightnings or the currents of electricity that we do for our buildings and so. And of course, I forgot the fire, of course, that creates light through the chemical reaction of burning carbon. So let's take any source of light. See? Remember this, that we have a source of light, and this light moves through the space in a wave. We have a wave here, and during these waves, there are particles that move that we call photons. The photons basically means light in Greek, photon. So those are the particles that move through this. Remember that all this is called vibration. And remember this, that the waves has up, down, up, down, up, down. So the periods that it takes to go from one side to another is what we call frequency. Frequency is how frequent they repeat. Okay? How frequent they repeat. That's the difference between vibration and frequency. Okay? So this wavelength, we will divide it into nanometers. So now imagine this, that here we have 1, 2, and 3 that are frequent. So we have frequency 3. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have frequency 4. Here changes and start to have frequency 5, for example. So this is just as an example, because what really is happening is that the frequency tells that you have an amount of time in between one and another. So what we have to say here is that we would say the opposite. So imagine this now to see it better, that from one aspect of the wave to the other, we, for example, have to count until 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that repeats once and again. So it's the frequency is 5. And now here we have less. So we can go through the wave and we will see that we have here 4, here 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it repeats. So it's a frequency. Frequency because it repeats itself all the time. Now, each one of these 5 is a nanometer. So imagine that this is the wave length of the wave. So in the wavelength, I have here 5 nanometers. Here we have 4 nanometers. Here we have 3 nanometers in each one of the frequencies. So now if we see this wavelength, we have here 1, 2, 3, 4. But here we start to repeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, we have more. So what this means, that this is low frequency and this is high frequency. What represents that low frequency is that you have lower amount of repetitions, and higher frequency is that you have a lot of repetitions, many of them. So I'm explaining this because we in the spirituality and the world of the consciousness, we used to say you have a high vibration, or you vibrate so low, and I resound on this frequency. We need to have a leap of frequency, and sometimes we have no idea what it means. Okay, so it's important to understand this difference so you can get it. So a person that vibrates low is a person that lives really slow, that you can kind of predict what is going to happen next because it's really slow and predictable. So good to know that low vibration is not bad. Low vibration is just that it's predictable. Like, for example, a tortoise. A tortoise is a very slow animal. So it's predictable, it's really slow. It has to sleep 5 months or 6. So it's not bad, a tortoise. It's a good being. Okay? So it's like having lower rhythm. Okay? And for example, in the other hand, we have a hummingbird, which is a very fast process. When we create this idea that vibrating low is wrong, it happens when our environment is changing, where the things are changing in my life, and I am not changing. I am doing exactly the same. So it creates an opposition between the two energies from the outside and inside that creates a conflict that brings me into disease, because or bad emotions or being sad or whatever, because my vibration is still low and my environment is vibrating high. Okay, that's the conflict that we can have. That's why we believe that vibrating low is a bad thing, but it's not. Okay, so in the same way as we live our ups and downs, the photon particles, they also live their ups and downs. So these particles that are living exactly the same as we live in different ups and downs are all the waves of frequency from the light, which is white. So when they reach our eyes and they reflect in our eyes, the wavelength starts to be perceived by the brain in the different nanometers, the different frequencies as it arrives to us. And that interpretation of the wavelength is the one that gives us the idea of colors. So this means that the colors are not outside, are inside, are within. The colors are basically the interpretation of our brain of these waves that are hitting the matter. So the colors are interpreted inside. So now the question would be, why do we see all of us this like blue? Because this is not really blue. It means that the components that we have here inside, that we can see the blue, the components that are there, the pigments that it has a shape, a structure in the physical structure that reflect the light in different wavelengths. So for example, the structure can be this, like this, 90 degrees of structure, or this, or this, or this. So the light will hit the structure in different ways. So when it comes back to us by this reflection, we will see the different colors. That's why we see all the same color. So for example, the people that is daltonic, that can't see all the colors, is basically because the eyes cannot see the whole spectrum of light. The spectrum of light is smaller. So imagine that these people can see only this, but they cannot see this one. They cannot perceive this wavelength because their eyes are not has a problem that are not 100% open to receive the wavelengths. So this. So that's why they confuse colors, or because they only see a few colors. Here, with colors happens exactly the same. Each color will be like kind of a word, a package of information inside this language of colors. So when you mix those colors and create new ones, it's like if you are creating words and stories and poetry and so on. So a lot of information just by mixing colors. So when we receive the colors from the outside, we are receiving data from the light, straight from the universe. So, for example, you have heard for sure the information of the white ray, the blue, the green, the yellow ray, the pink ray, the masters that represent those rays are colors. So, for example, the colors are given us in our subconscious and unconscious. The colors gives us information all the time that we are not aware of. Like, for example, all these colors that we relate with emotions, because those colors were present in situations or traumas that we have lived. For example, the color blue, for some people can represent calm, the skies, opening, but for other people it can represent fear and cold. So it depends on how you perceived that color in the situations that you perceived. So we relate colors with emotions. We relate colors with situations that we live, with data. So for example, we can relate the color red with intensity and things that are bad, like when someone corrects us and they correct the things with a red X or cross, or we see the lights in the streets, when we see the devil painted in red, when we see the lava of the volcanoes, we relate the hell with the red. So we culturally has been designed also into understand the red as something that maybe can be bad. This depends on the culture and depends on what the person has lived. It's not general, okay? So basically the colors has the data, the information of what emotions represents for us and how we relate with the world. So we can understand now that we are constantly receiving data in the outside. We are all the time receiving information. So eventually, in human history, after we receive all this data from the outside, we discover that we have things within to share to the world too. And we take those emotions and grab these colors from the outside that we relate with those emotions and start to express it in the outside to tell what happens within. And that's painting. So in history, what people used to do before using the colors, they used to carve the rocks and let some marks in the rock. Marking rocks and making some carvings in the rock. European languages, you may say pake, which in Latin is picto. Picto is to carve rocks. But eventually they started to put some things, some colors from the environment that they created to difference the carvings that they did. And that's what we call pigmentum. Pigmentum is the things that you put on the carvings. And from pigmentum, we have painting. So what is to paint? Is to leave a mark into the outside, to tell what is within into the outside, to leave it carved in the world, leave mark in the world. And remember, this here is the light that we receive as a wavelength into our brains through our eyes. So remember that the sun, the light from the outside arrives to our eyes also data. But we are also light. We are made with photons and electrons. We have our own light within that we call the soul. So we can also from within take that wavelength outside and express through the colors the soul that we have within. So basically, all history of art is basically humans interpreting the light that comes from outside and designing it from the light that is within. My advice regarding this topic is for you to show your own lights, your inner lights into the outside, to express them. It doesn't matter if it's just some marks or whatever, multiples of colors, but just allow yourself to express the colors from within, the emotions from your soul. Let's go to the information for today. Remember that also in the post today in the blog, I wrote about the meaning of the colors and how they appear, and also the history of arts, so you can have an idea of it. The vibration for today is Ra. The statement for today is, I am guardian of consciousness.